right? So more or less, we have covered this modeling part. So modeling is the first step. Whenever we are designing a database, right? Whenever we are designing a database for any real world situation or for any real world application, the very first part is to create the database model. So database model means it is basically the first impression or first blueprint or first sketch of the data, and after that we have actually mapped this uh, the first impression into some kind of logical schema. So logical schema is again a schema which is representing something, right? That is not the actual database, right? Database schema. So now, because when we have discussed conceptual schema, it is not a relational schema, right? When we have mapped this schema, large conceptual schema into logical, right? Then only it becomes the relational database schema, right? You cannot say that ER diagram is representing a relational database. You cannot say that. That's not true statement, right? Because it is not preserving, it is not basically implementing anything which is defined in the relational data model, right? Relational data model says simply each and every data object is uniquely available in the database table, right? But in ER diagram, we have not done anything like that, right? Right. So we cannot say that anything which is depicted in IR diagram can be called as a conceptual schema representation, can be called a relational database schema representation, right? So now, when basically we mapped this ER diagram or conceptual schema into logical, that's what we have discussed in the previous lecture, lecture number 11. So when we mapped this ERD into logical schema, there we have used the concept of primary key and foreign key, right? So that is the first instance when we say this is something related to the relational data model. So we have created the very first relational data schema, relational database schema, when we have created these logical schema tables, right? Because we have used the very important concept of relational data model, which is called constraints, right? And constraints, what is the use of constraints? Constraints are primarily used to ensures that there will be only unique instances of data objects, or maybe rows, or maybe basically tuples will be there in the database table. That's what the simple implication of relational. In one of the lecture, we have taken the definition of relational word. So whenever we use a relational database, relational DBMS, or relational data model, anything. So whenever we emphasize on relational term, it means in the database tables or in the database sets, whenever we will have data values, each and every entity or each and every database table will have only one instance, one occurrence of each data record. That is what the property of uniqueness. So whenever we say relational, it means we need to ensure the property of uniqueness, and by which so basically we are using constraints to impose this property on the database uh, tables, right? So now you can say that when we have created this logical schema, it means we have somehow created the logical database. That is the first impression. Now, basically, let me share some documents and instructions. Based on that, we can discuss few other concepts which are related to this SQL discussion, or discussion which are used to extend the detail about SQL, right? So naturally, with these notations, we are also going to discuss the few initial concepts of SQL, right? I don't know. I don't know how much you are aware about these concepts. Yeah. So let me wait. It is initializing. Yeah. So we can wait for a few seconds. Again, it is initializing again. So can you tell me how much you are familiar with the SQL? Can you tell me that? So have you read about the basic set of expression of SQL and basic set of clauses in SQL? Can you tell me that, if you are aware about these things? Because CS5 have these kind of discussion. So they might be have some kind of familiarity with these concepts. Can you tell me that? Let's wait for a minute. Yeah, so others may also respond. So how much you familiar with the SQL? Like SQL is having primarily three set of expressions. That's what we are going to discuss, and that's what we are going to implement during the labs. So primarily, SQL, why we are specifically using SQL, right? SQL is a simple set of expressions like any other programming language, right? So in that, am I audible to you? Is visible now, right? So there is some network issue. Now it is connected, so let me stabilize. Okay, so it is okay. It is available to you now, the screen and audio both. Yeah, can confirm. Okay, that's good. So let's make up this time which we have lost. So I am immediately sharing this simple notes with you. So while sharing only this thing has been freezed. So primarily it is available to you. This screen is available to you. Yes or no? Yeah, so that's good. So that's what we are discussing, right? So because now we are focusing on the part of this basically the conceptual schema part, like how to create this conceptual schema into the actual database. So to do achieve this, we need some kind of language or programming language, right? Because till this point we have focused on the conceptual part, or maybe modeling part, which can be done on any kind of maybe in the form of notes, or maybe form of visual layouting or anything. But now we have to we have to implement these instances, these schemas. So for that we need basically we need a kind of language, or we need a kind of tool, right? So that's why we need a proper programming language which are defined or which are configured into the database software or database management software. So primarily, each and every DBMS software will have some kind of languages or basically expression through which you can create the database. Like in case of Oracle-based system, it will have SQL, it will have MySQL in some cases, like in DB2, which is IBM DBMS, it will have uh, basically different type of programming language, right? So whenever we are creating, or we are trying to create the actual impression of logical schema, these following terms or following concepts are important, right? So I hope you are familiar with these terms. So these terms are like whenever we say relational database table, it means something, it represents, or it hints to a certain thing. Secondly, whenever we say attributes, it means it is referencing to a basically a particular aspect, particular column in a database table. Similarly, we will be referring terms tuple and row. So domain is something important. So whenever we say attributes domain, it means something. It means the possible set of values, right? So it is having importance. Similarly, we will have a database model or relational model constraints. So in this, I hope we have actually discussed this thing. So we can have primary key, we have unique, and then we have not null, and then there is check, then we have a default, right? So these are the all constraints, then foreign key, right? So these are the constraints we have discussed. Now we are going to implement them in the uh, implement in the database which we are going to create, right? Similarly, there is this concept of null value. So now null value and three value logic. So this last term or last concept is very critical whenever we are going to create the actual database, right? So these are the basic and important terms whenever we are discussing about the creation or the management of a relational database, right? So whenever we are planning to achieve this task of creating the logical schema into the actual database, the very first step is to create the relational database table, right? That's what it is written. So now we are creating the relational database schema in form of relational database table. So now from now onwards, our referring object or object for reference will be table, not schema. Schema is something, is a basically the first impression or the second impression that can be drawn or that can be written on a text paper. But now we are going to create the tables. So schema is somehow equivalent to the table, right? So that is the primary first step. Naturally, so whenever we are going to create database table, you should be taking care of two things again. The constraints which we are defining. So constraint could be out of these 6 different constraints which we have listed down. Now, whenever we are defining a constraint or whenever we define an attribute, it is important to identify the appropriate data type for any attribute, right? So these are the two important things whenever we are creating the database tables, relational database tables, you can say. Second step in this is naturally is the, so whenever we have created the database, the second step is primarily is to upload the data records. That is the obvious part, because eventually we will be going to utilize this database for some purpose, for business purpose. So these are the two steps. So naturally the basic impression is like in the left side you can see we have this schema representation of the database, and the right side you can see carefully. So here we have this schema representation of a database schema of company. Now in the right side you can see here, you can see this is the actual representation. This is the called this is, you can say, the snapshot of the database. So there you can see the different attributes defined on a column, particular database table, and we have uploaded some data value into it also, right? So this is how, this is what the objective is. The first objective is to achieve this, which is called conceptual schema, logical schema, and then we have to map, or we have to create its actual version into the database and upload the data values. So data values are naturally for the some kind of business operation or function operation, right? So this is the eventual objective, which as a programmer we are going to do, right? So as a database programmer, this is what we are going to, or this is what's supposed to be done by a database programmer, or maybe DBA also, right? So because DBA and database programmer are responsible, or basically having some kind of access to basically you can say perform these two primary tasks. First task is to create the database tables for schema, equivalent schemas, and then the second step is to upload the available data records. So it is now sometimes it is coming from by default, or sometimes it is coming from the user side also, right? So if it is assumed that user will be uploading the records, user will be submitting the details, then the task of DBA and programmer is to simply create the schema and make ready the database for users and provide the access to users so that user can populate the data. That is one way of preparing or making ready the database. And alternate way is to simply you can have the set of data records also. So along with creating the database, you can upload the data values also, right? So we can have two alternatives. So now we are just go further if we are going to discuss other details also now. So basically that's what I'm trying to explain you, that SQL is having primarily three sets of expressions, and before going to the various details about SQL, one thing you need to read about the basic question related to SQL. Like whenever we touch upon this term SQL, there are 3-4 questions related to it, which usually asked during the interviews and during the various discussion of SQL. So primarily, first discussion is that basically what basically SQL elaborates, right? What are the different basic features of SQL? That's the first question. So you can easily basically explore the possible answers of these questions. That what basically SQL composed of. That's what are the various features of SQL. That's one part. And second, what are the different set of expressions? That's what we have written in the subsequent text, right? So we have 3 possible set of expressions as far as programmer user concerned, right? We are not talking about the DBA, because DBA will have basically all privileges. He will have all the access, or he is privileged to perform all kind of expressions on the database. So we have not listed the possible sets for DBA, but these 3 expressions are available for a programmer user who can perform the basic instructions to create the database table and to upload the database records into it, and subsequently providing some kind of access on it, right? So that's one part. There are various questions also related to SQLs or fundamentals of SQLs. These all concepts are supposed to be discussed during the lab section. That's what I am trying to say, that it is important to have labs on time, on day, right? So eventually, that's why we are. I'm forcing you to find out the teacher who is going to engage your labs, right? Because SQL lab is not having much of assignments. Those assignments are very simple to implement, easy to implement and easy to observe. But primarily, it is not the important part of database lab. So getting into the details or getting into the fundamental concepts of SQL is important, rather than simply implementing a database and performing the SQL query. So we are having this balance between these two aspects. So whenever you're learning SQL, it is important to have some kind of basic idea about the SQL's its features, its implication, right? Along with naturally implementing or executing these basic expressions. So primarily from today onwards, we are going to explore these basic uh, concepts related to SQL. So we'll begin with basically these three sets of SQL. So three sets of expressions of SQL. Naturally, these are available for a programmer user. These will be available with you also whenever you are installing a SQL or MySQL version on your desktop or laptop for performing or completing the these basic you can say these basic expressions, these basic uh, operation on a particular database, right? So that's one part. Okay. So a second part is naturally is to have some kind of clarity on the different syntaxes. So we'll begin with discussing like what are the possible sets, what are the usage of these sets, and why we are going to use for different situations, and what are the implications, right? So you can see, I think you are familiar with the term DDL, DML, and DCL, right? So before going to discuss uh, more details about these expressions, let's take a call. Maybe you have some kind of basic idea, common sense based idea. So can you tell me why DDL is used for? Yeah, I'm waiting for your response. So can you tell me what is the objective of DDL primarily? Yeah, I'm waiting for your response. Yes, yes. Okay, so that's what we are getting. So the Hershey says that define basic structure of database, creating and modify database object. What else? What else could be? Any other student? Right, because it is important to have some kind of common sense based idea that naturally whenever we are talking about now, because we are now talking about the possible creation or maybe possible structure of for the database. So it means the very first set is obviously set of expression in SQL, which helps which helps you and which helps a programmer to create the database object, right? So DDL is naturally used to, or maybe it provides you the features or options through which you can directly create, you can create and manage. So manage means after creating, there might be some possibility that you need to change the structure of database table or something like that. So you need to, so by using DDL expressions or expressions which are in this DDL, we can create the structure that is obviously, and whenever it is required to manage or to manipulate that object, you can achieve that also, right? So it is simply says DDL is in a SQL, the first set of expression is DDL, which is data definition. Now we are talking about definition, right? So that's what the first thing you are doing, right? So like in any programming language, you use to define the variables. So it is like it is equivalent to initializing or defining a variable, because eventually when your program will be running or your program will be executing for some input value, it will the initialized variable which will be helping you to perform some computation to achieve some output. So similarly, in the case of database also, we are going to create this, we are going to initialize these structures, database structures. So primarily DDL is basically used to define, to create the structure, to create the outline, to create the layout of a database object, right? So it is to create and manage the database object. So now I am referring this term database object. So when I say database object, uh, it means a database table. There are various things which are coming in the definition of database objects, right? So object means it could be database, it could be a table, it could be a views, triggers, packages. There are various things available in this definition, right? So that is for sure that by using DDL, you will be able to create a database. You will be able to create a database table into a database. That is obviously clear and all common sense based, right? Similarly, once you create this structure, once you able to create a table. Now, second thing is to create or maybe upload the data value. That is a possible or an obvious second step, right? So for that, we will have a few expressions, few clauses to upload the data record, right? So upload, and so maybe after uploading you will realize that there are some data values which are incorrect, which needs to be modified. You will be using other expressions to achieve this task, right? So all these expressions which are used to upload the data record or maybe to manipulate or change the data records, these are all falling into this second category, which is called data manipulation, right? So these two sets are primarily used, are primarily controlled by the programmer user, right? Last last set which we are going to impose or achieve or implemented by a programmer user is the data control language, which is often referred as the DCL. It is simply is to provide some kind of or is to control the user access on a database object, right? Suppose you want to control the access on a database, whole database. You can use some expression to control it for some user. Like suppose in a database, we could have maybe 100 of users or millions of users also. So you can control the access of a user on a database, access of a user on a database table, access of a user on a database view. So all that. So again, we are using the definition of term of database objects. So by using these DCL expressions, you can control the access on database objects, right? So when I say database object, it means all these things: database object, views, trigger, packages, and procedures, right? So with this, actually, you can see that we have different clauses or different functions on each category. So for DDL, you can say, which is the very first set, it is used to create and manage. We have these possible sets: create, alter, drop, truncate, and rename. So right, so we have primarily 5 different clauses. I refer these terms as the clauses, right? Because ये कोई command नहीं है, ये कोई ऐसा कोई एक single function है, procedure नहीं है. So in SQL, it is used referred as a clause, which is the most appropriate term. So create is a clause, alter is a clause, drop is a clause, truncate is a clause, right? So these 5 clauses, we any SQL library you have for different purpose, right? And this is one of the rarest thing which we found in the programming language, right? That in case of SQL, we have or we will be using these terms: create, directly, altered, right? So whatever is the literal meaning of these terms, the same task will be performed by this clause, right? So whenever I say create, it means is to create, right? Whenever I say alter, it means it is written, or this clause is for altering some database object. Drop means it is for dropping a database object. So that's why SQL is referred as a structured query language, right? So a structured term is basically there to explain or to emphasize that in the SQL query or maybe in the SQL expressions, we will be using these terms, structured terms, right? So these are structured terms because create is a proper English term which is representing or which is explaining a structure. It's a procedural expressions. Like create is to creating something, right? So whatever is the literal meaning of term, literal meaning of a clause will be achieved by the clause. That's why it is called structured. So create is a proper English term, proper English word which represents to a structure. Alter is a proper English term which represents to a structured or a structured way of doing something, right? So that's what or maybe from that's where we are using this term structured query language, right? So SQL is having this prefix name is maybe before 95 or 96 it was named as a SQL, structured English query language, SEQUEL, right? but after some times they have renamed it as SQL, structured query language, right? So it is because of we are using the proper English or maybe proper structured English words to express its clauses and functions, right? So in DDL actually we are having these 5 clauses. Now we in the DML, which is to upload the data record, we have these 3 expressions. Insert is to upload the data record simply. Update is used to update is to update or modify the existing record, which we have uploaded in the previous expression or by using insert. So maybe because of some reasons you need to update the records, right? Delete is naturally to remove the data records. Because of some reasons you need to remove some records or some single value or entire attribute or entire tuple. So basically by using delete you can achieve this task. And the last set, which is DCL, is to control the access on a database object. We could have 2 expressions, grant and revoke, right? So basically, if you see, these 3 sets are primarily used to some kind of management, right? So management means managing anything involves creation, then manipulation, and then control, achieving some kind of control. So whenever we say, whenever I refer this term DBMS, so DBMS is nothing, it is a set of softwares to manage the database. So managing means creating the database and basically uploading the data records, controlling the access. That's 3 things, right? So that's why any programmer or any user will have these 3 primary tasks to perform, right? So, and that's why we are saying these 3 expressions are available to a programmer, right? Because he will be going to manage the database, right? So by using these tasks or by maybe performing these 3 simple tasks on a database, you can say I'm a database manager, something like that, right? So last set is referred as a retrieval query, right? So this is altogether a different set, and so all those queries, all those clauses and functions which are placed in the retrieval query set here, these are basically available, or these are defined for the user's query, right? So whenever user is requesting something on a database, you need to provide, or you need to define some kind of query by using these clauses, right? Select from, where, order by, having, group by, and there are various numbers of functions, various set of functions. Aggregate is one of it, substring matching. There are various. So this is what we are going to implement during the labs also, right? So in one of the lecture, I think we have pointed out this correctly, that in the lifespan of a database, there are around 92 to 93% of queries of this nature only, retrieval query, right? And these 3 set of query are having a remaining percentage, right? Because DDL is something which you will be doing once in a life of a database. DML is naturally it's not frequent, it's concurrently or maybe it's recurrently occurring. DCL is again it's a one time or maybe less frequently occurring. So it is the role of retrieval query. It is the retrieval query or clauses which are used to retrieval queries are which is important to understand, and that's what we are doing in the labs also. So in the database lab we are having around 14 to 15 lab experiments. Out of 15 we are having around I think 12 experiments, 12 set of experiments under this category of retrieval query, right? Because after creating the database, you can upload the data record and you can provide the access to certain user. But after that, you are able to, or you are ready to perform these retrieval query, right? So with this actually basic introduction or basic idea about the 3 set of expressions of SQL and different expressions in each class, let's begin discussing DDL, right? So primarily when I say DDL, it is basically referring to the creation of definition of a database object, right? So again, I am repeating, database object means whenever I say database object, it means it could have a database. It is talking about creation of database. It could be talking about creation of database table. It could be talking about views, creation of views, and all other things, right? So database DDL is primarily is to define. It is primarily is to create the definition of the database. It could talk about the first impression of outline of the database in the system, right? So whenever we are going to create a database in any system, the very first thing is to create the database. You cannot create a database table directly on a system, on a SQL system, right? Because whenever we initialize our SQL system which is having database, because in laptops database is not created, it is not initialized, because in our local PC, local systems are running on a file system based system, right? These are the systems, these are the operating systems which are running in the file system. Now if you want to create a database in your system, you need to install some kind of DBMS first. So that's what I am trying to say, that for CS4 and CS6, the very first step is to create or to install a DBMS system in your laptop. Then only you can create a database, because our systems are not made for database based systems. They are running, our systems are primarily running on the file based systems, right? So the very first step is to install a DBMS. That is naturally. So once we make ready our system with any kind of database, right? So within the existing or available databases, existing available storage space, we will have now one side it is a file based system, and in a separate space we could have a database based system in our local PC or local system. So once you install a MySQL system or Oracle system in your PC, we will have both file based system and database based system, right? And in this small space where we have configured this DBMS system, there is a separate space created, right? There is a separate space created. So during the implementation, during the labs, once your system is initialized, this DBMS system initialized, now you are suppose having this SQL editor on. It means the current position of control is on this open, in this whole space which is designed for the database part. So there you cannot create database table. That's what I'm trying to say. Now to create database table, the first task is to create a database. So database is what? Database is a so let's say we are trying to create a database 1. So this database 1 will be the smaller space in this whole space of database. So suppose there is a country map. So let's take this example of country. So creating database or after installing a DBMS system in your system is like creating a new country, outlining the country's boundary, right? And now you want to create basically a smaller part of the space. So the first task is to create the database. So space for DB1. So let's say we are trying to create a database 1. So once you execute this expression, create database DB1, it will create a simple space. So it is like within a country you are creating a separate state. So there is a separate region for one state, separate region for the second or different databases. So whenever we issue this expression create database 1, it basically outline a separate space for one database, right? So like this you can create different databases, DB1, DB2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. So within a country you can initialize different states, regions for boundaries for different states. So that's what we have done. Now after creating a database, the next task is to reach to the inside of this database. So by using this use DB1, you can simply move the control into inside our database, right? Into a database, right? So with these two previous steps or these two previous expression in SQL editor, you can simply perform this task of creating database and then going into a database. Because eventually क्या हो रहा है कि हम database create करते हैं, naturally भी होता है, जब मैं आपको कहूँगा कि okay, you need to create the company database, then you need to create the database table. So that's why we are saying that the creating database is the first step. Then second, you have to create the database table. For that, you you need to go to the inside region of a database. So that's what we are doing by use database expression. So once you type this use database 1, the control wheel automatically reaches into the DB1 side, right? So now, something like that. So you can easily see now the third step is obviously, so because it is requested that you have to create the different database tables. Now, once you reached inside the database, you can simply create the student table, right? So this is the important task. Like creating a database table is important task along with the database. So there are various situations now because there is no different or alternative expression for creating database. This is the default expression. These two are the default expression for creating the database. Now, whenever we are creating a database table, now table is having attributes also. So you cannot have a database table. You cannot create a database table without having a attribute, right? आप वो करके देखिए लैब में. अगर आप सिंपल टाइप करते हैं create table student then semicolon, it will show some kind of errors, right? So वो आपको एक आइडिया होना चाहिए कि सर एरर क्या है, right? That is important. Whenever interviewers ask a question from SQL, they used to ask these kind of questions. So let's say suppose I write this expression, what could be the possible error? So they need the exact statement, error statement, right? So that's what you are going to at least test it once at least, right? So whenever I suggest you a statement during this theory class, you need to perform at least those tasks, right? So whenever we execute this kind of expression, like let's say I'm posting this create table student. So let's say I'm trying to execute this expression. So what could be the possible error? So it will show that student table at least have one attribute, something like that. It means we cannot create a database table by having no instances of attributes, right? So this is what something it is defined in the MySQL or in the DB system, right? So this is the typical syntax. So whenever we try to create a database table within a database, this is the typical syntax. Create table student, and you can have like this also. This, then attribute name, and simply execute, right? So this typically, so these are the standard keywords. Create. Yeah, let me rectify. Create. So let me highlight these terms which are by default terms. So create table. Now we are trying to create table student. So this is the attribute. This is the name of tables which we are going to create, right? So create table is the obvious terms, system defined terms, syntax defined terms, student, the name of table actually, and then the attribute name. So attribute name is first name. That's what I'm trying to create. Then character 20. It means it is having data type character 20. So these are the terms which you can customize. So you can customize the table name, then attribute name, its data size. Then again we have second attribute as a roll number. Its data type integer, right? And then the size of attribute 10. Size for attribute is 10. So roll number could be of length 10. Similarly, we have DOB as a date. So date is not having any size for that, right? So this is the typical syntax. So whenever we want to create, so here we are trying to create a database table student with 3 attributes: first name, roll number, and date of birth, without any additional thing. We have simply initialized this expression, right? So with this, if you want to see the attribute, if you want to see the possible output, what it has been created, you can simply type describe. So DESC, then student. So with this, you can see the possible table created, right? So with this, so it is simply used to describe this table created. So जो आप लैब में जाएंगे तो इसको जरूर करिए और इसको देखिए कि इसका आउटपुट क्या है. और एक चीज आपको बताता हूं मैं कि जो इस टेबल का आउटपुट है, the output of this expression is referred as a metadata table. Metadata table, right? Because इसका आउटपुट क्या होगा इस एक्सप्रेशन का, डिस्क्राइब स्टूडेंट का, it will show the structure की it will show the information about the created table. जो student table हमने create किया है उसके structure के बारे में information देगा कि you have created first name and its data type is character, it's there is a not null constraint, something like that. तो आप lab में जाएंगे तो देखेंगे. But my concern is whatever information is it is displaying, whatever is the output of described student expression, it is referred as a metadata because it talks about data. So this data जो स्टूडेंट डिस्क्राइब स्टूडेंट का जो आउटपुट है it is a data which is describing about a table which is describing about the data. So definition of metadata is it is data about data, right? So typically the output of this described student is a metadata table. Now this is a simple expression. We have not defined any constraint on the database table. Now let's see the second expression. Second expression could be again of the same student table part. We have now initialized what we have now using the constraints, if you can see carefully. Now we have imposed, so again create table student2 and there is attribute first name character 10. Now we have imposed this constraint not null, right? Not null. So we have added this constraint not null integer, then we have primary key constraint or roll number. So now we have added these two constraints on these two attributes. So the basic definition of not null, we have discussed that it will not accept a null value. So whenever we are going to upload a data value in this table student 2, in this column f name, there will be no null value. It will not accept null values. Similarly, in the case of roll number, we have defined this attribute as a primary key. It means it will not accept null and it will not accept duplicate values, right? So it is like not null and unique. That's what we have taken also. So now, so this table we have created with two constraints. So you can see whenever we create a database table, the first name is attribute. The first thing you need to mention is attribute name, its data type and size, then constraints. So three things you can list down. So with this expression you can see we have listed three possible things. Now there is this favorite scenario of mine, right? So in case of database tables or relational database table, it is widely important to have at least I'm saying at least primary key, right? So because primary key is something which ensures the property of uniqueness, right? So यहाँ पर आपने देखा कि in case of this table we are having only this roll number as a primary key. Now in the second scenario, if you can see, we have defined these two first name as roll number as a primary key. Now you can see carefully. So here we have create table. You can see carefully, right? You can see carefully. Create table student 3, first name character 10, roll number is a 10, primary key. This is what I'm talking about. Now with this expression, you can see with this expression, actually this whole expression, you can create the primary key of a student 3 table. The primary key will be combination of these two attributes, first name and roll number, right? And its meaning is that the implication of this primary key, where we have two attributes in a database table student 3, that the combination of the values, first name and roll number, combination of values of these two columns, these two attributes will not be repeated. That's how this primary key will be imposed, right? This is the typical case. We will be having a lot of scenarios of this kind where we will be creating the primary key with the multiple attributes. So again, we are having two attributes, first name and roll number, as a part of primary key, right, of the student table 3, right? Again, we are not having, so there is this misinterpretation of the students that, sir, we cannot have two attributes as the primary key. Yes, we cannot have two attributes as a primary key, but we could have two attributes as a part of primary key, right? So let me type the possibly last expression of today's class. So let's see what you need to check. What could be the possible errors of this expression which I am typing right now, right? So कुछ students को idea होगा already. This I am trying to right now. We are trying to impose the same thing. Yeah, just a minute. With this, yeah, perfectly. So if you can see carefully in the first expression, in this expression, table student 3. Now let's see student 4. So in a student 3 table, we have tried to create first name primary key, comma roll number primary key. So this expression is naturally saying that we have two attributes on the table student 3, and we are trying to create two primary keys in a database table. But this student 4 table is saying that we have two attributes in a database table, but we are trying to create a primary key which is having two attributes into that part, right? So I think with this we can conclude, because we are getting out of time right now. So I'm stopping here, and in the next next class, which is planned tomorrow, we will discuss the two remaining important part of the database creation, right? So I hope things are clear to you. Now, if you have any questions or any queries of the concepts which we have discussed till now, you can discuss. You can post a question, so we can take one or two questions, right?